All right, so if I go into this database, right? If I come into here, there's this Django session, but there's nothing in it, right? So when you put something into session, it does store it in the database, and I'll show you how things are actually sorted and figured out, because each individual person that does something with session gets their own little entry in the database itself. I know Joseph had asked me about this earlier for session. Are you literally just periodically putting things into the database and taking it out? You essentially are doing that, but Django has this built-in functionality to do that for you. So let's do this. Let's say on this page, I'm going to put a form. It's going to be set X. So that's going to be the action that I'm going to take when I click submit in this form. Method equals post, and I'll just have label for X. What is X? And then I'll have an input that is type number for X. And then submit button, set X. All right. So then in here, I will say print request.post X, right? So let's see what happens.
You forget token.
Huh?
You forget token. Like the S.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did forget the CSRF token. You're right.
What?
I told you at the very beginning of this spec, I will always forget this.
Every time.
Every single time. All
And
right.
your form action is taking you to set X.
Yeah, I changed it in here. Set X.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
Yeah, cool. So if I run my server.
If you ever remember the token, the class will mute.
That's how you know the world is going to end.
Oh,
When I
no.
actually remember it, then there's a
Yeah.
problem.
I'd be scared.
Like, I've built things in Django so many freaking times, and I always forget it. All right.
Not that you should, but you can delete that middleware if you just want to like not have that be a problem.
No, I do want to have that because it's a security thing.
Yeah, it's good to do.
Yeah. All right. So what is X? 2323. And now if I look in here, it says X is 2323.
Whoa, cool.
But that's just grabbing it from the form, right? If I want to, I don't know, hold on to it, I need to do something with it. So I'm going to use session to take it. So I'm going to say X equals request.postX. And then I'll say request.session X equals X. So I'm taking X from the form and I'm putting it into request.session. So let's restart our server. X is 100. So now, if I refresh this table, I have one entry. Session key is blah, 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 blah. Session data is blah, 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 blah. And the expiration date is March 31st at some time, right? So, but how does this actually do anything for me, right? I've got this session key and session data, but I have no idea how to access that stuff. So if we come in here and we inspect element, what's actually happening behind the scenes in our application, I've showed you this part before. We have a session ID.
Oh.
Right? So all that's actually being stored in the user's client side is this value. But what's actually in the database is whatever I put in there. It's obviously encrypted, just in case, someone tries to be all Mr. Hackerman and stuff. But now that we have that set up, we can actually use that somewhere else. So I can make another page. I'm going to change this to set things. And make this show X. And this will be views.show things. Right? So if I click submit, it goes to set X. And then we can have this redirect to /show X. And then this should, we need to make this show things. So I'll say def show thing, or show things. Request. And I'll say context. Actually, I don't even need to do that. Return redirect, or return render request show x.html. And then let's make our show x.html. I'm just going to put an h1 tag that says x equals request.session.x. So the thing that I want to point out is that if we're grabbing something from session in Jinja, it does not like it if we do something like this. We will get an error that says cannot parse the remainder of blah, 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 blah. So let's check this real quick. If I say X, what is X? 10. Could not parse the remainder X, right? It doesn't like the square brackets.
Oh,
So you can access session from here, just wherever there would be square brackets, replace it with dot. So request.session.x. So now if I refresh this page, X equals 10, right? But where did I set X in the first place? I set it here. X is request.postX, and then request.session.x equals whatever that was, right? I can simplify this if I want to by just taking it straight from the form submission, putting it into session here. So I'm setting it here, but I can access it here. I can access it here. Right? Earlier when we said X equals 10, and then if I tried to come in here and say print X, I got this big angry thing saying, I don't know what that is. But session gives us the ability to do that because it stores this information in a way that can be accessed from this method or this method or this method or one of 7 bajillion other methods or directly in the HTML, right? It's kind of this globally available thing as long as it's been put there in the first place. And on that topic, I do want to show you what happens. This show things, right? The URL for this is show X. If I were to come in here and say, let's see, where is it? Application. If I delete this, and I come here, I get nothing, right? In here, if I say print request.session X, I'm going to get this key error at show X. Because what it's trying to do is grab the data in here with this key, because this thing here is, if my understanding is that this is essentially a dictionary that is encrypted, the whole dictionary. So what it's trying to do is take this key and decrypt it based on the user that's logged in. But the user that's logged in is not actually logged in because I deleted the cookie that was keeping track of that thing, right?
Okay.
We could add something in here to say if X is not in request.session, redirect to the base route.
Oh.
I'll have to start this, refresh this, and now it'll just take me back here. And if I put something in here, it takes me here. And then I could go to ESPN.com and say, oh, ha 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 ha. Let's see all the things that are going on. Ooh, latest signings trades. Yes, Tom Brady is leaving New England. That makes me very happy. All kinds of other things. And then I want to go back to my site, right? Localhost 8000 / and then I want to see what X was again. It's still there. I've left. I completely left the website. And to show you, I can do this. I'm going to create a new. This is incognito mode. If I go to localhost 8000 / show X, I'm going to get. What do you think? Is it going to show up, or is there going to be an error, or is it going to redirect me somewhere else?
Both. All three.
It's gonna show up.
I don't know.
How?
Well,
I don't think it's going to show up.
yeah, I don't think it's going to show up.
It won't save the following information: cookies and site data.
Right, because this is an incognito window, which means that I've essentially tried to access this from another page, from another computer. Incognito mode will wipe all of your cookies and use none of it. So if I try and go here, it's going to take me back here because in this browser,
Oh.
it's not there. But if I do a new browser that's not incognito mode, so it has my same settings and everything, it will work. This is a different browser. Okay, hello. Right, it's the same thing. Because if I come in here, inspect element, go to application, I still have this session ID in here, right? 1TC, yada, 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 yada. If I refresh this, I have something for 1TC, blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so the session's like mid-level, like a in between database, and it's you can go look at it with like the DB SQLite thing, and you'll see the encrypted stuff that you have in it.
Yes,
Is that right?
but at the end of the day, you don't even really need to worry about all that. The only thing that you really need to know is that if you put something into session, like this, request.session some key equals something else, you'll be able to access that from anywhere. So I could say if X not in or in request.session print X is right. So if we come into here, I'll need to restart my server. If I go here, it says, where is it? X is 3434, right? I'm on this page. I haven't done anything with it. If I go to /show X, X is 3434, right? But if I clear this and I refresh this page, let's see. When I refresh it, it doesn't say X is 3434 anymore, right? Because I cleared it from session, it's not in session anymore. But as soon as I add it, X is 100. And if I go back and refresh, it says X is 100, right? So session is just a way that we can take some, it's essentially a global variable with extra steps. So it's a variable that we can store things in and be able to access from any of our other methods as we see fit. Now there is one last thing that I want to show you with session. And that's going to be how to actually clear session. Obviously, I showed you that you can just straight up delete your session ID that you have in your browser, but can't really do that for somebody else.
You were just doing that with inspect element, right? So that would just be on your side?
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
So I'm just doing that on my side, but you'll notice that in the database, that first one that we made is still there, right?
Mm.
This is still here.
Okay.
But what we can do is I'm going to make this logout method. Hint, hint, hint. Request.session.clear.
Somebody take a screenshot.
I'll be putting this on GitHub for you guys and the
Oh.
video, so you'll get all this stuff you can look back at.
But
Right,
it has
I-
all the hints in it.
Yeah, it does.
Beautiful.
So this logout, I'm clearing session, right? So if I save that, saved, and it looks like it restarted the server automatically. If I go to clear session, nope, it did not restart my server. Let's put a thing here that says session, log out. Okay. So I had set something into session, right? If I go to show X, it's taking me back. Because I ran this logout function, right? So if I set X to 1,000 and I come here, cool. If I come back here and don't do anything, then if I want to, I can go back to show X and it'll show me what X is. But if I come back here and I click log out, which runs this method right here, it clears session. So now if I try and go to /show X again, it redirects me back here because it is cleared from session. It's no longer there. It's not able to be used anymore.
What about your database?
Oddly enough, it's still in there.
Try
What?
flush.
Let's see.
I think session.flush removes it from your database. If I remember correctly.
I think session.flush may have been a Django thing. But so either way, what request.session clear is doing. Okay, so flush will straight up get rid of it from the database. Cool. So I recommend using flush instead.
Oh, so you just got rid of one item.
Right.
Oh, can you show where you put that line of code in again? Oh, okay.
Right here. I have it so that if I click on this A tag, it goes to clear session, which runs views.logout, and then
So
it will
what-
flush it.
What that did is that just removed the most recent database item?
No, not the most recent database item. So if I set this, right? I have
Okay.
this session ID, which is 8WUANSL, blah, 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 blah. Right? Which is right there.
Oh,
Now, if I go to an incognito browser, I do that. Inspect element, application. This one is 0P01, right? Which is
okay.
right here.
Right.
So if I go back to not the incognito one, but this one was 8WUAN, right? If I click log out, it removes it from here. And if I refresh this, I still have the 0PO, but the 8WU whatever one is gone, right?
Oh,
So it deletes an entire entry from the database based on what session key is attached to the person that clicked log out, right?
okay.
Just like
Now
you
if I-
would with a dictionary
Mhm.
in Python.
Okay.
So now I clicked log out in the incognito browser, which means if I come back here and refresh, that one's gone also.
Oh,
This one is still here, and this one is still here because these I did request.session.clear. So you
Is
could
those-
use.
Are those because of the dot flush or the session dot logout?
Which one? The ones that were, well, so logout is request.session flush.
Oh, okay.
So the
That's
ones
what-
where the entire entry is gone from the database, that was a result of flush. But .clear will, the database will still be here, and it'll still have the key value pair, essentially, the key and then the data. But I think it just empties what's actually inside of it. So what session actually looks like when it's, decrypted, it looks like a dictionary where I'd have X is 100 or whatever, right? So if I
Oh.
run request.session.clear, it doesn't get rid of the whole thing. It just gets rid of this.
Okay.
But if I run
Okay.
request.session flush, it gets rid of the entire thing.
Okay.
So request.session clear is like pulling a page out of the book. You still have the book,
Right.
or erasing a page out of the book, I guess I should say. You still have the book with the empty pages, but there's nothing in it.
Yeah.
But request.session flush is like literally taking it and flushing down the toilet, and now it's gone forever.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's another way
Wasteful.
of clearing your cookies. Is that what you're doing?
Huh?
It's just another way of clearing your cookies?
It doesn't clear all of your cookies. So request.session flush will only clear it for this specific application, right? This website that I'm building. It won't be able to like clear the cookies that you have from everything else that you've done online. Like it won't clear your Amazon shopping history or whatever, or anything like that. It'll just clear the cookies for this one specific project. Thomas, if you're going to say something like I want cookies, don't hide. Come on. He said it privately.
What?
He messaged me
Oh.
privately and said he wants cookies.
Oh my god.
Unbelievable.
He's such a little girl.
But
So-
Patty, did that answer your question on the cookies thing?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool.
So from what I've read,
Mhm.
clear is good if
Mhm.
you as a manager of a website want to keep track of who's sort of been
Mhm.
to your site, but you don't want them to necessarily have a cookie.
Mhm.
Your user to have a cookie. Flush is good if you're trying to save space.
Mhm.
For the purposes of our project, Flush is great.
Mhm.
It's going to save you space.
Okay.
Any other questions on session?
This is making me hungry. Cookies. Can you send me a 3D print file and so I can 3D print some cookies to eat?
No.
That's
Don't
how that
think you
works,
should.
right?
I don't.
Um,
Not yet, anyway.
Session. I'm not sure. I don't have any questions.
I have an unrelated question.
Okay.
When you're in code and you highlight some data and you wrap the div tags around it, how do you do that?
Oh.
Like you're using some sort of shortcut where you just highlight some data and you automatically put the div tags around it, like the open tag and the
Oh, I did
closing
this
tag?
thing.
Yeah, that.
So that should work for all of you guys. So the dot thing is, it's a class, right? When we're dealing with CSS, you might have some class name, is and then I don't know, display inline block, right? You have something like that. So this dot indicates that it's a class. So if I say, dot column small 4, and if I hit enter, it should create a div with that as the class, and it does. If I say it's just a bunch of abbreviation stuff. Like if I want a text input, if I say input : text dot column small 3, it'll create a text input with a class of column small 3, and then automatically leave me in the name. These are just little shortcuts that I've picked up over time. I'm pretty sure that they're built into Visual Studio Code though, because I don't remember downloading any
Yeah, I think it's the built-in emit.
Cody, when it comes to using label,
Mhm.
like, isn't it okay to just use like an H5 tag? Like I've been using H5 tags and then just having my input outside of the div. Is that fine too? Or what's the benefit of using label?
So I think one thing that I have learned about label, so like if I say label for X and then leave the label tag empty, nope, never mind. I think it's just like a good practice syntax kind of thing. I don't know if it would have been covered. Did Brianna talk to you guys all about HTML validators?
There's a validator from W3 Schools, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, so I think that that's where that kind of comes in, where it's not going to like break your website or anything. But there's certain things that go on the internet, like, you know, Google's spider crawlers, whatever, that go around and map out the whole internet so that their search engine actually works. They rely on a lot of the data just from how your website is set up, like what the HTML looks like. Like it's not random or human generated. If you go to Google and you look up, you know, elephant, like this elephant dash Wikipedia, that's because that is the H1 tag. Elephant and then dash whatever the website name is.
Oh.
Oops, I accidentally just exited the Zoom thing. But yeah, so a lot of that is kind of handled a certain way for a reason. At least that's my understanding of it. So I always use label because it was just kind of ingrained in me. Plus, there's some like bootstrap functionality, I think, that is tied to labels HTML tag in general. So yeah.
So when
Used
it
them
comes
in Angular, right? Was it Angular?
I think so.
Yeah, I think when we used them in Angular, they reached back and grabbed what they needed from your model.
Yes, that's what it was. That's what it
Yeah.
was.
so when
They'll get more useful.
Gotcha. When it comes to like our current assignment, so the reason we're using sessions so much is because we have a login and registration where we want temporary information to be bold, right?
Yep.
And so then every time the user comes back to the website, their information is kind of temporarily saved. Okay.
Exactly. And so for the extent of the login registration, really all you need to put in there is the user's ID, because that's how you can then grab any other information that you need, while also not storing too much personal information in session. Any other questions about session or the session on session?
Oh, that part where you, oh, never mind. I think I was gonna ask if the breakout session request sheet you were writing on it, but never mind. All the stuff you wrote is still there. So
Yep, you guys can all access that. It was just some information that I put on the key kind of things to focus on, make sure that you understand, as well as the assignments that will get you there.
Right.
So
good.
aside from remembering X, does anybody have any like ideas of what session can be used for and like why it's important, especially in like projects coming up?
That code I would like to work on like many to many, if you.
Okay, I think we can do that in a second. But
like I know obviously for login registration, but maybe like map data potentially. Like if you're looking up an address or something, or would that not apply?
Potentially.
Yeah, potentially. The login and registration is a big thing though, that people should keep in mind. Did anybody want to explain why it would be important for login and registration? Or anybody have any ideas?
I think it would
You
help.
go to the password or bank information just in case if you need it.
Can you repeat that, Praneeth? I just heard the password and bank information.
Yeah, once you log out all your information like the password or if you put up a bank information like a card or something that gets wiped out from the database just for security.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good reason to use to make sure that your website uses like the flush method for sure.
Yep. To kind of expand on that, you know, I don't think it's really that big of a thing anymore, but there was a period of time where, you know, internet cafes where they had their own computers were like a thing. And you could go use a public computer. Imagine if you had logged in, and it didn't log you out for some reason. Either there was no timer or whatever, or you didn't click log out. Somebody else could then go and like sit down on that computer and just be able to access your stuff, right? If I, in this window, just go to, you know, gmail.com or YouTube, right? I'm already logged in, and that's because of session, right? There's something in session currently in my cookies that's saying, hey, this person is logged into this thing. So it can kind of jump past the whole logging in phase. It's really like a simplicity thing, right? It streamlines the user's experience so that they don't have to sit there and literally log in every single time that they try to go to this website. It'll remember them because they've been there before, they've logged in already, and it hangs on to that for a period of time. We did notice that in the DB browser, it does have an expiration date, so it's not going to last forever. Eventually, it will, you know, close out and prevent you from being able to skip that authentication.
How is session like actually tracked in that sense? What I mean by like, is it based off of like your IP address that a session gets submitted, or is it based off of like that one browser entry, or because you pulled up a new browser and it made a new session,
right?
So like,
so
how does that
what
work?
it'll do is, again, if I come in here and I go to inspect element, I don't have anything in, but if I say, you know, something like this, it creates some kind of session key, right? This is this session ID, VFAFBD, blah, 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 blah. If I refresh this, it gets created, right? So at the time of creation, I don't know the specifics of how it's figured out. I'm sure like nobody does, just because it's a security thing. The only people who probably know the specifics of how that key is actually generated are the people who are actually working on building Django. But it's likely some kind of encryption process that takes it might be the IP address or the you know, some kind of combination of the time that the action actually took place, and it hashes it together and encrypts it somehow so that it looks like this. There's no pattern, there's no discernible information that you can get from this, and that's kind of the point. You know, if you were able to look at this and be able to figure out why it's set up like this, then it wouldn't be very secure.
So us learning Django, is that like a widely used framework for
Django
me?
is I think the most commonly used web framework for Python websites.
Okay.
Yeah, Django is pretty huge still.
Any other questions on session? Nope. Cool. That's the case. Thus ends the session. Hope you had a good session. I'll update the. So I do want to show this just in case any of you guys weren't able to see it. So this is the Python channel that I created for you guys. If you go to the top next to the little thing that says members, there's a pin. If you click that, it'll pull up the posts that I've pinned. Here's a list of resources. I've got the breakout session sign up sheet right here. GitHub repo. So if I click that, it'll go to the repository with, this is just the algos. I need to update the stacks one. No, not that one. Where's Mattermost? Right there. And then it's got a video from the algorithm breakout session this morning and yesterday's lecture and yesterday's lecture's GitHub. So utilize this. It's got a lot of information. I'll be putting to this breakout session video and GitHub repository here also. So just wanted to show you guys that.
Wow, awesome.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks for stopping by. I think Dakota's going to be in here answering some questions for a little while. I'll be keeping an ear out in here too. I'll also be in my office.
Cody, I lost track.
Of?
I want to know where would I see the recordings?
Okay, so
missed it when
if
you were talking.
you have Mattermost, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, so in the you should be added to a private channel called C Python 2020.
I am.
Right. So on the top right, there's this little thumbtack.
Pin post, okay.
If you click that, there's
Or
one
video.
pinned post, and
Or video.
as I record videos, I will be adding to this post with that
Awesome.
information.
Thank you.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Bye.
Cool. All right. Awesome. Let's stop sharing.